To a certain extent, you're right. The Assad regime was stabilizing only in the sense that it was predictable. And many of the countries, including Gulf states and Israel, at some points thought it was better to deal with the devil they knew than deal with an unknown devil who would potentially be an Islamist jihadist state, as we may be looking at now. So that fear led many of them to think if we can keep him in place, we at least know what his red lines are, what his capabilities are, and we don't see him making active moves against any of us. He is simply enabling things that threaten us, like housing Hezbollah if you're Israel, or like enabling the Captagon trade if you're the Gulf or Jordan.
So, Kirsten, what role do you believe the U.S. should play, will play, if any, in Syria?
Well, right now we're watching the U.S. administration really engage in some diplomacy, trying to understand who the players are and wanting to stay involved and up to date, really urging for ceasefires, urging for things like humanitarian assistance to continue to Syria. The Donald Trump team has made it clear that they do not think there's a U.S. interest involved in getting engaged in this conflict right now. They want to watch it play out. They are making statements about Israel's right to definitely defend itself during all of this against whatever may come. And they are making statements about how this disavows Russia's promises to the region that it is a strong security partner. So you are seeing them weigh in on how they're reading the tea leaves, but not making any promises on a role the U.S. would play.
Does Israel use this now as the opportunity to address all their security concerns as it related to the north of the border?
That is the big question. It sure could. The question that everyone is holding their breath on is, what will Israel do? We are already watching them this week strike chemical weapons sites and stores of long-range missiles inside Syria to prevent either Iran-backed militias, Russia, or frankly, unknown factions of HTS from taking possession of those. And it's striking air defense radars, anti-aircraft batteries, and military aircraft on the ground in Syria as well to ensure that Israel can continue its operations to erase weapon stockpiles that could threaten Israel in the future if it did fall into these hands. And note also that this would give them a clear path to fly over Syrian airspace en route to Iran if desired. But we could also see Israel choose a path where they work with a new government in Syria to potentially establish peace along their shared border. In fact, they may have already made an overture to President Assad in Syria just before his ouster, offering to encourage the U.S. to throttle back sanctions against him in exchange for him helping to halt the flow of weapons from Iran to Hezbollah through Syria. And there's a hint already of the possibility that Israel could also now reach out to HTS or the developing transitional government inside Syria. And in that, the indication is that HTS has deconflicted its operations near the Israeli border in areas like Quneitra with the Israelis. So could this pave a way for that border to quiet down and for peace there to be cemented? Israel is logically concerned about Syria falling into the hands of Islamist extremists and would not feel any peace was secure as long as that ideology ruled Syria. But peace on that border in the near to midterm would definitely allow them to focus on things they need to finish with Hamas and Hezbollah.
Hey, Kirsten, just about 30 seconds left. How big of a blow is the fall of this Assad regime to President Putin and Russia?
So the blow is that the Russian model is to support unpopular dictators across the globe to gain access and concessions to valuable resources in their countries. Syria was an example. So we're in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic. And Russia has relied on its air base in Syria to fly people in and extracted gold and other minerals out. So it's been more than even just the relationship with Syria and its access to that naval base in Tartus that puts it so close to NATO and on the Med. But now their operations in Africa and other places are curtailed because of their reliance on that air base in Syria. So to what extent in the long term this will be curtailed depends on the relationship it develops and the deal it strikes for use of the air base by whatever government is stood up in Syria. Yep. We also now see Turkey saying it will not allow Russian vessels to pass through the Dardanelles until Russia makes peace with Ukraine. So the fall in Syria is also impacting Russia's ability to wage war in Ukraine.